Hey everybody, David the AI Guide here. Welcome to another episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you to all my new subscribers. We had quite a jump in new subscribers in the last week, so thank you for that. And also be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and the occasional Medium article. So, as we move into fall, there's also going to be some new things. Specifically, I will be doing a first live stream shortly, and I'll get information out about that on Facebook and Instagram, and it will be on Facebook. So hopefully you'll be able to join me. I'll give you a week or so notice on that one. That'll be a very interesting live stream discussion about exactly what's going on in AI right now, which is a lot and it's too much to cover in these short segments. Today I want to do something I haven't done in quite a while, which is a book summary. And the book this time is AI Superpowers, China and the United States. And this book was written by Kai-Fu Lee, got his PhD from Carnegie Mellon, and then he started working in technology. His PhD was in AI, by the way, pretty important to us here. And he worked at Apple, he worked at SGI, he worked at Microsoft, he worked at Google. He was president of Google China in his last big corporate position. And then in 2009, he started a venture fund for AI companies in Beijing, China. So Kai-Fu Lee is a heavy hitter, and this is a great book. So we're going to do this in two parts. This is part one, and we're going to sort of talk about the first half of the book. And the first part of the book really starts out with Kai-Fu Lee talking about where China has come from. So historically, Silicon Valley started really in the late 50s, and then really started to progress and mature in the 60s and into the 70s, where it became the focus of technology globally. And so there was a very unequal distribution of technology-driven power, if you will, in the world, all the way from the 50s to, I'm going to say, the 90s. And there's a specific reason for that. Back in the day, this was all before the internet, and the US had invented many of the technologies, and the internet was invented in the US also. But stuff wasn't easily shared around the world. It's not like it is now. It was completely different. It was very difficult to get information. You had to know somebody who was working on something that you wanted to take further, or you had to be a writer in the press who had access to all these companies, or, some other type of direct relationship that could get you information that would be shared. And as we all know, it wasn't until the late 80s that China really started its development boom that resulted in the second largest economy in the world. So there's timing involved here and everything. So, but when China first really got going with industrialization, they also were very interested in technology, but their technological capability at that point was based in manufacturing, of course, because they ended up taking over manufacture of a lot of the electronics and stuff like that from Japan. But also they would copycat, which means they had totally different rules and laws in China about intellectual property, and they haven't really cared about that, so they would reverse engineer software and copy it and sell a local Chinese version of it. Keep in mind that the population of China is over 1 billion people. So the market there is 3 times the size, maybe closer to 4 times the size of the United States. So the market, size of the market, consumer market, is fundamentally different in China than in the United States. So there was first this copycat era, and then Kai-Fu Lee talks about how there was an effort to create an indigenous Chinese technology sector, not just for hardware, but for AI. And the big thing that drove the advent of this was AlphaGo, when AlphaGo beat the best Go player in the world, because Go is a very serious game in China, and all of a sudden everyone in China woke up and said, in a way, said, what the hell has been going on? There's this technology being invented and used that we're not really involved in, and we want to be involved in that. So I'm really condensing this, but suffice it to say, there were specific people involved, including Kai-Fu Lee, with taking this from sort of a fringe idea in China to mainstream and government supported and government focused. And he talks about the mayor of Beijing, who created the first AI alley or Silicon Alley over there in Beijing. And then the central government of China, about 5 years later, came out with a directive that instructed the mayors of every city in China to set up one of these Silicon Alleys. And these were incubators, venture hubs, and sort of critical mass technology centers that allowed China to very, very quickly catch up with where the United States is in AI, which China has caught up, by the way. So originally, the US was decades ahead of China, and now, at this time, China is equal with the United States. And one of the major themes of the book is, later, potentially a leader over the United States in AI. So why would that happen? Well, they talk about, Kai-Fu Lee talks about 4 waves of AI, and this is a very important concept that he talks about. But the first is what they call Internet AI, is what he called, and this is really decision engines. So this is what Amazon uses to make recommendations to you for what you will buy along with what you just bought, or Facebook serving you ads or showing you something that it knows you want to buy based on your activity on Facebook. So those are decision engines, and those are very well advanced at this point, and getting more and more sophisticated by the day. One of the reasons they're advancing so quickly is because of a later wave of AI that we're about to talk about, but it put Internet AI on steroids. So that was the first wave. That was the first way in which AI was used in any way that would have affected the consumer, and part of that is Siri and Alexa, and the invention of the iPhone really started to bring all this to the mainstream. The second wave is business AI. So businesses were slower to adopt, traditional businesses were slower to adopt AI, and still are, than the technology sector, like Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. And the reason why is because their data is a mess. How do I know this? I've spent multiple parts of my career at different companies fixing their data and straightening it out so that it's much more usable. In fact, I'm helping someone do that and near the end of that right now. And it's a very laborious process. But once it's done, then all of that data suddenly becomes usable to AI because it's organized, it's correct, it's labeled, and then an AI algorithm can use it. So this is what's been happening in business, and it's the second wave. But now we are really in the third wave, which is perception AI. And this is what we talk about a lot. And this is sensors, robotics, self-driving, all the things that we talk about all the time that are also exponential technologies converging with AI, which is another exponential technology, of course. And the way in which perception AI is putting internet AI on steroid is speech recognition, GPT-3. We've talked a lot about that. So this is big stuff. 3 waves of AI have already happened: internet AI, business AI, and perception AI. The 4th is general artificial intelligence, and I just did a short about a breakthrough in that. It came out a week ago. Check it out. We're still some years away from AGI, but one of the smartest men in the world, Ray Kurzweil, says 2029, and it's already late 2021. So this is going to happen before you know it. So that's really part 1 of the book. Thank you. Next time we'll do part 2. Check out my book on Amazon, please. It's called The Beginner's Guide to AI, which really tells you very well and in a very few pages for each chapter how AI is being used today in about 12 different industries. So it's got a short history section that's very condensed but complete, and then it's got 12 different sectors of the economy and how AI is being used in those sectors. And I think it gives you a really good overview of AI today and how it's already in your life. And also click the link below for your free AI resource. You got to know AI within 5 years. You'll be using it every day at your work. Might as well start to learn it. The resource is free. Everything, all of the tools and further resources within my resource are also free. So it's all free. Set aside a little time and start learning. Thanks. Take care. We'll see you next time.